The story of Rapunzel. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a beautiful girl named Rapunzel. She had long, golden hair that shone like the sun. Rapunzel lived in a tall tower deep in the forest. The tower had no doors and only one window at the very top. She had been taken away from her parents when she was a baby by a wicked witch. The witch wanted to keep Rapunzel all to herself because of her magical hair. Rapunzel was very lonely. She spent her days looking out of the window at the beautiful forest. She loved to watch the birds fly and the flowers bloom. She also loved to sing. Her voice was sweet and lovely, and it filled the air with joy. One day, while Rapunzel was singing, a handsome prince was riding by on his horse. He heard her beautiful voice and stopped to listen. The prince looked up and saw Rapunzel in the tower. He was amazed by her beauty and her lovely singing. "Who is that?" the prince wondered. He wanted to meet the girl with the golden hair. The prince decided to come back the next day to hear her sing again. The next day, the prince rode back to the tower. He called up to Rapunzel, "Hello. Who are you? Can I see you?" Rapunzel was surprised to hear a voice. She had never seen anyone except the witch. She looked down and saw the prince standing there. "My name is Rapunzel," she said shyly. "I live here in this tower." The prince smiled and said, "Your voice is beautiful. Can you let down your hair?" Rapunzel was not sure, but she wanted to meet him. She tied her long hair into a braid and let it down for the prince to climb. The prince climbed up her hair, and soon he was at the top of the tower. When he saw Rapunzel, he was even more amazed. She looked like a princess. They talked and laughed together. They shared stories about their lives. Rapunzel told the prince how lonely she was in the tower, and the prince told her about his adventures in the kingdom. Every day after that, the prince came to visit Rapunzel. They would spend hours talking and singing together. They became the best of friends. Soon, Rapunzel realized that she loved the prince, and the prince loved her, too. But one day, the wicked witch came back early. She saw the prince climbing up the tower. The witch was very angry. She pulled Rapunzel's hair hard and said, "You will never see him again." The witch took Rapunzel away to a dark forest where she could not escape. She cut off Rapunzel's beautiful hair and locked her in a small room. The witch was very mean and told Rapunzel that she could never leave. Meanwhile, the prince came to the tower and called for Rapunzel. But there was no answer. He looked up and saw that her hair was gone. The witch had tricked him. The prince was heartbroken. He searched everywhere for Rapunzel. Days turned into weeks, and the prince did not give up. He rode through the forest, calling her name. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, where are you?" he shouted. Finally, after a long search, the prince found a wise old woman who lived in the woods. She told him, "I saw a girl with long hair in a hidden place. She is in the witch's dark forest." The prince was filled with hope. He thanked the old woman and hurried to the dark forest. When he arrived, he called out, "Rapunzel! Rapunzel! I am here!" Rapunzel heard his voice and ran to the window. "Prince! You found me!" she exclaimed. She was so happy to see him again. The prince quickly climbed the tower, and they hugged each other tightly. Rapunzel told him what the wicked witch had done. The prince promised to rescue her. Together, they made a plan. The prince found a way to sneak into the witch's room when she was not there. He took some scissors and cut through the lock on the door. When the door opened, Rapunzel ran out, and they escaped together. But just as they were leaving, the witch came back. She was furious. She tried to catch them, but the prince and Rapunzel were too quick. They ran as fast as they could through the forest. Finally, they made it to the edge of the forest. The prince and Rapunzel saw the bright sunshine shining ahead. They ran into the light and felt free at last. The prince took Rapunzel back to his castle. He wanted to keep her safe and make her his princess. When they arrived, everyone was happy to see them. The king and queen welcomed Rapunzel with open arms. They were so glad that she was safe. Rapunzel and the prince had a beautiful wedding. They invited everyone in the kingdom to celebrate. They danced and sang all night long. Rapunzel was no longer lonely. She was happy and loved. The wicked witch was never seen again. She was lost in the dark forest, and no one cared. Rapunzel and the prince lived happily ever after. They ruled the kingdom with kindness and love. Rapunzel became a beloved queen, and together, they made the kingdom a beautiful place. From that day on, Rapunzel would often sit in her garden, singing sweet songs. She never forgot her time in the tower, but she was grateful for her freedom and the love of her prince. And so, the story of Rapunzel teaches us that love can overcome any obstacle and that we should never give up on our dreams.